The Varaxian High Commander Lisset stared at the magnified image on the command center's main view screen, mandibles clicking in what his crew recognized as unrestrained glee. The human warship Defiance drifted through space, its hull pockmarked, with scorch marks and debris trailing behind it like a comet's tail. "Magnificent," Lisette hissed, 8 compound eyes gleaming with anticipation. "Their last pathetic defense, broken before our might. Signal the Armada. The human homeworld falls today." First Officer Kravnix chittered nervously. "High Commander, our sensors indicate unusual energy readings from the human vessel." "Of course there are unusual readings," Lisette snapped. "The ship is dying." The Varaxian Dominion had swept through 7 star systems in half a cycle, their technological superiority, overwhelming all resistance. Humans had been the only species to mount a meaningful defense, but even their ingenuity had limits. Now, with Earth's final guardian vessel crippled before them, victory was assured. Aboard the HSS Defiance, Commander Eliora Vask dragged herself back to her command chair, blood streaming from a gash above her eye. Around her, the bridge was a chaos of sparking consoles and emergency lighting. Of the original bridge crew of 12, only 5 remained. "Status report," she growled, pressing a medipatch to her forehead. Lieutenant Dario Reeves looked up from his console, his dark skin illuminated by the emergency lights. "Main power at 12%. Life support failing. Weapon systems offline. The Varaxians have stopped firing. They think we're dead in the water." "And Project Phoenix?" A thin smile crossed Reeves's face. "Operational, Commander. Core temperature optimal. We're ready." Vask nodded and opened the ship-wide comm. "All personnel, this is Commander Vask. Evacuation protocol is now active. You have 4 minutes to reach escape pods. I repeat, 4 minutes." Toggled a hidden switch on her command chair, revealing a biometric scanner. Pressing her palm against it, she spoke the activation phrase, "When all seems lost, humanity finds a way." Across the ship, hidden systems hummed to life. On the Varaxian flagship, Tactical Officer Prelzak suddenly straightened. "High Commander, the human vessel, it's changing." Lisette turned to the view screen just as the outer hull of the Defiance began to shift. Sections that had appeared damaged now separated cleanly, revealing gleaming surfaces beneath. What had seemed like a dying vessel was transforming before their eyes. "Impossible," Lisette whispered. The human ship's apparent wounds were actually meticulously crafted deceptions. The Defiance wasn't crippled, it was metamorphosing. As the Varaxians watched in growing horror, the vessel's true form emerged. The conventional hull fell away, revealing a sleek obsidian structure beneath, covered in geometric patterns that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The ship was now half its original size, but radiating energy signatures unlike anything their sensors had ever detected. Escape pods jettisoned from the transforming vessel, carrying the human crew to safety as the ship completed its transformation. "All Varaxian vessels, this is High Commander Lisette. Open fire! Destroy that ship! Immediately!" But it was too late. The metamorphosis was complete. Where once had floated a conventional human warship, now hovered something else entirely. A perfect manifestation of humanity's desperate ingenuity. Commander Vask's voice echoed across all Varaxian communication channels. "You thought you understood. Us. You thought you had measured the limits of human capability. You were wrong." The transformed ship pulsed once, and a wave of energy unlike anything the Varaxians had ever witnessed expanded outward at impossible speed. As it washed over the front line of their fleet, their ships simply stopped. No explosions, no destruction. They simply ceased all function, drifting lifelessly in space. Lisette stared in disbelief as the wave approached his flagship. In that moment, he finally understood. They had gravely miscalculated. Humanity wasn't finished. Humanity had only just begun. Lisette's flagship shuddered as the energy wave passed through it. Unlike the frontline vessels, they didn't lose power completely, but every system flickered and stuttered, leaving the mighty Varaxian dreadnought vulnerable. "What is happening?" he demanded, chitin plates rattling with fury. "Explain this immediately!" Science Officer Jektrol hunched over his console, multi-jointed fingers frantically working controls. "It's unlike anything in our database, Hi." "Commander, the wave appears to be selectively targeting our quantum communication arrays and navigation systems." "Impossible! No species has that level of precision." On the HSS Phoenix, for that was now the ship's true designation, Commander Vask floated alone in the central chamber. Her body was suspended in a translucent gel, neural interfaces connected to her temples, spine, and major nerve clusters. Through these connections, she wasn't merely controlling the ship, she had become the ship. The Phoenix was humanity's desperate gambit, developed in secret after the fall of their outer colonies. It represented a paradigm shift in warfare. Not bigger weapons, but a fundamentally different approach to space combat. Targeting Varaxian flagship neural network, Vask thought, and the ship responded. The Phoenix's hull rippled as specialized emitters aligned. Initiating selective quantum disruption. The technology was barely understood even by the human scientists who had created it. They had discovered that consciousness itself had quantum properties that could be manipulated, and the Phoenix was designed to interface directly with those properties. The ship wasn't just a weapon, it was a consciousness amplifier. Aboard the Varaxian flagship, the crew began experiencing strange phenomena. Visual hallucinations, temporal disorientation, memory lapses. "High Commander," First Officer Kravnix said urgently, "our warriors are reporting cognitive disruptions across all decks. They cannot maintain focus on their tasks." Lisette himself felt it, a strange doubling of his thoughts, as if someone else was thinking alongside him. "Deploy cognitive shielding," he ordered. But even as he spoke, he was uncertain if he had actually given the command or merely thought about giving it. The Phoenix moved with impossible grace, dancing between energy bursts from the few Varaxian ships still capable of firing. It wasn't evading through conventional maneuvering. The ship seemed to anticipate attacks before they occurred. "Admiral Kostrova, this is Phoenix," Vask communicated to the hidden human fleet waiting beyond the solar system. "Phase 1 complete. The Varaxian command structure is compromised. You may begin your approach." Light years away, a fleet of human vessels emerged from their hiding places in the dust clouds of the Oort cloud. Unlike the conventional warships the Varaxians had crushed in previous encounters, these were smaller, faster craft, each piloted by a neural-linked human consciousness. Back in the battle zone, Lisette fought against the cognitive interference, forcing clarity through sheer willpower. "Target that abomination with everything we have!" he roared. Multiple Varaxian vessels managed to lock weapons on the Phoenix. Energy beams and plasma torpedoes converged on the human ship from a dozen directions, a storm of firepower that would have vaporized any conventional vessel. The Phoenix didn't attempt to evade. Instead, its hull began to shimmer, the geometric patterns flowing like liquid metal. When the barrage hit, the impossible happened. The energy was absorbed, channeled through those flowing patterns, and then redirected outward in a precisely calculated burst that struck the already damaged Varaxian vessels. 3 enemy ships erupted into silent flowers of light and debris. In her neural suspension, Vask allowed herself a moment of grim satisfaction. The technology worked beyond their wildest expectations, but the true test was yet to come. "This is only the beginning," she broadcast on all frequencies. "You sought to exterminate us. Now you will understand why that was your terminal mistake." Behind her, the stars seemed to bend as the first wave of humanity's neural-linked fleet arrived, each vessel pulsing with the same obsidian patterns as the Phoenix. The hunt had begun. The arrival of the human neural-linked fleet turned the tide of battle with shocking immediacy. Each ship moved with the intuitive grace of its pilot's thoughts, communicating instantaneously through quantum entanglement, rather than conventional signals. To Varaxian observers, it appeared as though the human vessels were performing a choreographed dance, anticipating their tactics before they were even implemented. Inside his flagship's deteriorating command center, High Commander Lisette fought against the cognitive interference flooding his mind. The Varaxians had conquered 17 species across 30 star systems, always with the same efficient brutality. None had offered resistance like this. None had turned the tide so completely. "Emergency protocol! Omega!" Lisette commanded, voice crackling with desperation. "Contact the Dominion Corps. We require reinforcements." Communications Officer Zithval raised all four hands in a gesture of helplessness. "Impossible, High Commander. Our quantum arrays are completely non-functional. We are isolated." For the first time in his centuries-long military career, Lisette felt fear crawling beneath his exoskeleton. The human ships weren't destroying the Varaxian fleet. They were systematically disabling them, targeting propulsion and weapons systems with surgical precision. "They're hurting us," he realized aloud. But to what purpose? Within the suspended animation chamber of the Phoenix, Commander Vask directed the battle through pure thought. Her consciousness expanded beyond her physical form, perceiving the battlefield from multiple perspectives simultaneously. She could sense the neural patterns of the Varaxian commanders, their confusion, their growing terror. Phase 2. Initiation. She communicated to the fleet. "Convergence pattern Epsilon. Prepare for consciousness cascade." The human ships began to arrange themselves in a precise geometric formation around the disabled Varaxian fleet. As they moved into position, the obsidian patterns on their hulls synchronized, pulsing in perfect harmony. Aboard his vessel, Lisette watched with growing dread as the tactical display showed the human ships forming what appeared to be a giant three-dimensional mandala in space, with the Varaxian fleet trapped at its center. "What are they doing?" he demanded. Science Officer Jektrol studied the readings with all 8 eyes wide. "The energy signatures. They're creating some kind of resonance field. It's affecting quantum states at the subatomic level." The Varaxians had always viewed themselves as the apex species of the galaxy, their technological advancement making them virtually godlike compared to the younger races. Now, for the first time, they faced something beyond their comprehension. Commander Vask initiated the consciousness cascade. Through her neural connection, she directed the combined power of 50 human pilots, their minds synchronized through the quantum network. Together, they generated a field that transcended conventional physics, a manifestation of collective human consciousness acting directly upon reality itself. The space between the human ships began to shimmer with iridescent energy, forming connections between vessels until the entire formation glowed with power. At the center of this web, the Varaxian ships floated helplessly. Lisette felt it first, a presence in his mind, vast and implacable, not invasive, but revealing. In an instant, he experienced something no Varaxian had ever encountered: true empathy. The neural interface forced him to experience the suffering his species had inflicted across the galaxy, every death, every extinction, every world laid waste. He screamed, falling to the deck as his mind was overwhelmed with the psychic backlash of 1,000 atrocities. Around him, his crew experienced the same phenomenon, their collective consciousness forced to confront the consequences of their empire's expansion. "What is this?" he gasped. Commander Vask's voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "This is understanding, High Commander. You took our colonies. You slaughtered our people. You thought us weak because we valued life. Now you will carry the knowledge of each death you've caused." Across the Varaxian fleet, crews collapsed as the Consciousness cascade forced empathic awareness into minds that had never evolved to comprehend the suffering of others. It wasn't a weapon of destruction, but of revelation. And for the Varaxians, that revelation was unbearable. In the suspended animation chamber, Vask monitored the neural patterns of the Varaxian commanders. The technology was working as designed, not destroying their enemies, but fundamentally changing them. "Admiral Kostrova," she communicated, "the consciousness cascade is complete. The Varaxian neural patterns are permanently altered. They can no longer ignore the suffering they inflict." Light years away, at the edge of the solar system, Admiral Oren Kostrova studied the data feeds from the Phoenix. "Confirmed, Commander. Phase 2. Successful. You have changed the course of this war in a single engagement." Vask allowed herself a moment of solemn reflection. "Not just the war, Admiral. If our calculations are correct, we've changed the Varaxians themselves. They'll never be the same." In the command center of the Varaxian flagship, Lisette struggled to his feet, his perception of reality fundamentally altered. The campaign of conquest that had seemed glorious now filled him with unbearable guilt. He looked at the human ships, surrounding his fleet, no longer seeing enemies but the architects of a terrible enlightenment. "What have you done to us?" he whispered. 3 days after the consciousness cascade, the Varaxian Dominion sued for peace. It was unprecedented in their 50,000-year history, the apex predators of the galaxy requesting diplomatic channels, rather than continuing their campaign of conquest. At the neutral meeting ground of Proxima Centauri's 4th planet, a barren, atmosphereless world chosen specifically for its lack of strategic value, representatives from both species gathered inside a hastily constructed environmental dome. Admiral Kostrova led the human delegation, his weathered face revealing none of the exhaustion from 3 years of desperate war. Beside him stood Commander Vask, still physically weak from her neural integration with the Phoenix, but insistent on attending. Her neural implants glimmered subtly beneath her skin, a permanent reminder of her transformation. Across the obsidian negotiation table sat High Commander Lisette and 3 members of the Varaxian High Council who had traveled from their homeworld. All 4 aliens moved differently than they had before the consciousness cascade. Their normally fluid, predatory movements now hesitant, almost pained. "You've permanently altered our species," Lisette began without preamble, mandibles clicking, softly. "Every Varaxian connected to our neural network has been infected with your empathy virus. We cannot unsee what you have shown us." Admiral Kostrova's expression remained neutral. It wasn't a virus. It was understanding. "The effect is the same," hissed Council Elder Rez Kara, her exoskeleton showing signs of stress fractures, a physical manifestation of the psychological trauma. "Our warriors can no longer fight without experiencing the suffering of their enemies. Our expansion has halted. Colonies are declaring independence. The Dominion is fracturing." "Perhaps it needed to fracture," Vask said quietly. 17 species extinct. 32 worlds rendered uninhabitable. Your glorious expansion was genocide on a galactic scale." The Varaxians shifted uncomfortably, experiencing the guilt their species had never evolved to process. The consciousness cascade hadn't just forced them to witness their atrocities, it had rewired their neural architecture to feel the consequences. "We have a proposal," Lisette said after a long silence. "The Dominion will withdraw from all contested territories, including your outer colonies. We will provide reparations in the form of technology and resources. In exchange, we ask only one thing." "And that is?" Kostrova asked. "Never use the consciousness cascade against another Varaxian vessel. What you have done to us is unbearable. Many have taken their own lives, unable to reconcile their past actions with their new awareness." Vask leaned forward. "And if we refuse, Then the Dominion Council has authorized the use of our stellar extinguisher technology against your son, Lisette replied, without any hint of threat in his voice, just resigned determination. We would rather die as a species than live with this humanity you have forced upon us. The irony of the word choice wasn't lost on anyone present. Admiral Kostrova and Commander Vask exchanged glances. They had anticipated many outcomes, but not this level of existential crisis among their enemies. We need to confer, Kostrova said finally. The human delegation withdrew to a separate chamber. Once alone, Vask turned to Kostrova. They're serious. Their neural patterns show extreme distress. They'd rather commit species suicide than continue living with empathy. Can we even disable the cascade effect? The quantum entanglement is self-sustaining now. Dr. Nivea Okafor, the chief scientist behind the Phoenix Project, shook her head. Not without destroying their entire neural network, essentially lobotomizing their collective consciousness. The cascade has integrated with their communication systems. It's permanent. Kostrova paced the small room. So our options are to allow them to remain transformed and risk them destroying our sun, attempt to reverse the process and essentially cripple their civilization, or there is a third option, Vask said quietly. We could help them adapt. Humans have carried the burden of empathy since our evolution. We could teach them to bear it. You want to rehabilitate the species that nearly drove us to extinction? Kostrova asked incredulously. Vask touched the neural implants at her temple. The Phoenix Project wasn't just about winning a war. It was about changing the nature of conflict itself. We have an opportunity to transform an enemy into something new, something that might eventually become an ally. The Admiral stared at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. You've already seen something in their minds that gives you hope. I have, Vask confirmed. Beneath the trauma, there's a capacity for change. The Varaxians evolved as apex predators. Yes, but their neural plasticity is remarkable. They can learn to integrate this new awareness. When they returned to the negotiation chamber, the humans presented their counter-proposal, a joint initiative to help the Varaxian species transition to their new neurological reality, with safeguards to ensure the security of human worlds. Lisette studied them with all 8 eyes. You would help us adapt to this condition? Why? Vask met his alien gaze steadily. Because that's what humans do, High Commander. We adapt, we help others adapt, and sometimes we transform our greatest threats into our greatest opportunities. As the negotiations continued into the night, a new chapter in galactic history began. One where humanity's greatest weapon proved not to be destruction, but transformation. 10 years passed since the Battle of Sol and the subsequent Treaty of Proxima. Centauri. What had begun as an existential struggle for survival had evolved into something no one could have predicted: the Galactic Reconciliation Initiative. On the verdant world of Harmonium, a planet precisely halfway between Earth and the Varaxian, homeworld of Morsica, the newly constructed Empathic Science Academy opened its crystalline doors for the first time. The architecture blended both species' aesthetic sensibilities, with soaring human-inspired arches supporting Varaxian geometric precision. Commander Eliora Vask, now Ambassador Vask, stood on the ceremonial platform, her neural implants now less visible but still functioning. Beside her stood former High Commander Lisette, his once fearsome exoskeleton now adorned with the blue markings of the reformed Dominion. 10 years ago, we met as enemies. Vask addressed the assembled crowd of humans and Varaxians. Today, we meet as partners in the most ambitious neurological and cultural exchange program in known history. The audience, once bitter enemies, now sat integrated among each other. The process hadn't been smooth. Early cultural exchange programs had failed spectacularly. Varaxian suicide rates had skyrocketed in the first 2 years after the consciousness, cascade. Religious and philosophical movements had sprung up across the former dominion, trying to reconcile their species' history with their new empathic awareness. But slowly, painfully, progress had emerged from chaos. The Empathic Science Academy represents our shared commitment to understanding the neurological foundations of consciousness across all sentient species. Lisette continued, his voice carrying the distinctive harmonic resonance that all cascade-affected Varaxians now possessed. From our greatest defeat has come our greatest opportunity. After the ceremony, Vask and Lisette walked through the Academy's botanical gardens, designed to accommodate the biological needs of 17 different species, including survivors, from civilizations previously thought extinct under Varaxian rule. "Did you know this would happen?" Lisette asked, gesturing at the thriving interspecies community around them. "When you deployed the Phoenix, did you foresee this outcome?" Vask smiled faintly. The Phoenix project had multiple projected outcomes. This was actually Scenario 7, considered highly improbable by our strategic analysts. Yet you pursued it when given the opportunity. "Because I saw something in your mind during the cascade that few others did," Vask replied. "Beneath the conquest programming, there was curiosity, a fundamental desire to understand the universe. Your species wasn't inherently destructive. You were trapped in evolutionary patterns that no longer served you." Lisette's mandibles clicked in what had become the Varaxian expression of thoughtful consideration. "Many still resist the change. The purist movement grows stronger in the outer colonies. We have similar reactionary elements among humans," Vask acknowledged. "The Phoenix Defense League still advocates for using the technology against other potentially threatening species. Fear is a powerful motivator." They reached the center of the gardens, where the Phoenix Memorial stood, a scale replica of the ship that had changed the course of galactic history, rendered in transparent crystal that caught the light of Harmonium's twin suns. "The irony is not lost on me," Lisette said, studying the memorial. "Your greatest weapon was not the technology itself, but the fundamental human trait it embodied, empathy. You defeated us by making us more like you." Vask shook her head. "Not more like us. More like who you could have been without the evolutionary pressures of your homeworld. The consciousness cascade didn't add anything to Varaxian neurology. It simply unlocked potential that was dormant." Group of young Varaxians and humans passed by, engaged in animated discussion about quantum neural mapping. These were the first generation of the reconciliation, children raised after the war, studying together to build a different future. "The purists call them abominations," Lisette observed. "They say they've been corrupted by human influence." "And what do you call them?" Vask asked. Lisette's compound eyes followed the students as they disappeared down a crystalline corridor. "I call them the future. A better future than the one we were building through conquest." As they continued their tour of the academy, reports reached them of a new crisis emerging at the edges of known space. Strange energy signatures unlike anything recorded in either human or Varaxian databases. Something was coming from the galactic core, something powerful enough to disrupt subspace communications across 3 sectors. "It seems the universe has more challenges waiting for us," Vask said, studying the preliminary data on her neural interface. Lisette clicked his mandibles together in the Varaxian expression of resolute determination. "Then we will face them. Together, Ambassador. Perhaps that was the purpose of the consciousness cascade all along, not just to end one war, but to prepare us for something greater." As night fell on Harmonium, the Phoenix Memorial lit from within, casting prismatic light across the Academy grounds, a reminder of how close both species had come to destruction, and how unexpected their salvation had been. The anomaly from the galactic core arrived faster than anyone had predicted. It manifested as a swirling vortex of dark energy that defied conventional physics, appearing simultaneously in 12 different star systems, including Earth and Morsica. On Harmonium, the Empathic Science Academy became the impromptu command center for the joint human-Varaxian response. The great hall that had hosted philosophical debates and cultural exchanges now buzzed with tactical displays and emergency communications. Analysis confirms it's artificial in origin, Dr. Okafor reported, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. These energy signatures couldn't possibly form naturally. Ambassador Vask studied the data through her neural implants, while Lisette processed the same information through the reformed Varaxian neural network. Their different cognitive architectures approached the problem from complementary angles: human, intuition matched with Varaxian precision. "It's a test," they both said simultaneously. The assembled scientists and military personnel turned to them in surprise. "The positioning is too deliberate," Vask explained. "Each anomaly has appeared in the capital system of a spacefaring civilization." Lisette continued her thought seamlessly. "And the energy output is carefully calibrated, powerful enough to disrupt communications and cause fear, but not actually destroying anything." "Why test us?" asked Admiral Kostrova, who had traveled from Earth at maximum speed once the crisis began. Before anyone could answer, the anomalies across the galaxy pulsed in perfect synchronization. From each vortex emerged a crystalline probe the size of a small moon, identical in design despite materializing light years apart. On Harmonium's primary display, they watched as one of these probes positioned itself in orbit around Earth's moon. A similar scene played out at Morsica and 10 other homeworlds. "We're receiving a transmission," the communications officer announced. "It's broadcasting on all frequencies, in all known languages, simultaneously." The message that filled their communication systems was simple but profound. "We have watched. We have waited. The test is concluded." Silence fell across the command center. "Open a response channel," Vask ordered. "To which probe?" the officer asked. "All of them. They're quantum entangled, a single entity existing in multiple locations." When the channel opened, Vask stepped forward. "This is Ambassador Eliora Vask of Earth. Who addresses us?" The response came instantly. "We are the precursors. We seeded this galaxy 2 billion years ago, then withdrew to observe. When intelligence evolved, we established the great test." Lisette moved beside Vask. "What test? What were you looking for?" "The capacity to transcend evolutionary imperatives, to choose harmony over dominance. For eons, we watched civilizations rise and fall, locked in cycles of destruction. Then you changed the pattern." Understanding dawned on Vask and Lisette simultaneously. The consciousness cascade, the transformation of the Varaxian species, the reconciliation initiative, all had been observed by these ancient watchers. "You've been monitoring us," Vask said, "waiting to see if we would destroy each other." "Correct." The Varaxian Dominion had followed the path of 17 previous apex civilizations: expansion, conquest, eventual self-destruction. Humanity was positioned to follow the same pattern. Once you developed the Phoenix technology, you could have used it to exterminate your enemies. "But we didn't," Kostrova interjected. "You chose transformation over annihilation. This has occurred only twice before in 60 million years of observation." The implications were staggering. An ancient race had been watching, evaluating, waiting for species to break the cycle of violence that seemed coded into the evolutionary process itself. "What happens now?" Lisette asked. "What comes after the test?" The crystalline probes pulsed again, and new data flooded into their systems. Information about technologies beyond anything either humans or Varaxians had imagined. Transportation systems that could cross the galaxy in moments, energy generation that could reignite dying stars, medical techniques that could extend lifespans indefinitely. "The inheritance of this galaxy is now yours to share. Use it wisely. The cycle can still resume if you allow it." With that, The probes began to dissolve, transforming into clouds of luminescent particles that seeded themselves into the atmospheres of each world they had visited, leaving behind only their knowledge and a lingering presence in orbit around each homeworld. In the Harmonium Command Center, humans and Varaxians stared at each other in stunned silence. The data they had received would transform civilization overnight, technologies that would have taken thousands of years to develop through conventional research. "They gave us the stars," Dr. Okafor whispered, scrolling through the technical specifications for faster-than-light travel unlike anything they had conceptualized. "No," Vask corrected gently. "We earned the stars. Together." Lisette's compound eyes reflected the holographic displays showing the precursor technology. "What will we do with this inheritance?" Ambassador Vask looked around the room at the assembled representatives of two species that had nearly destroyed each other, now standing together at the threshold of an unimaginable future. "We'll do what humanity has always done when facing the unknown," she said. "We'll explore. We'll learn. We'll make mistakes and correct them. And we'll bring others with us on the journey." She gestured to the star map now filled with new possibilities. "The precursors chose us because we broke the cycle of destruction. Now we have the responsibility to ensure it remains broken, not just for our species, but for all who will come after us." As the implications of their new reality settled over the assembly, Admiral Kostrova raised an important point. "The Phoenix technology. We should destroy it now. With what we've been given, it's too dangerous to maintain." Vask and Lisette exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them, one made possible only by the neural understanding that had grown between their species. "No," they said in unison. "The Phoenix wasn't a weapon," Vask explained. "It was a mirror, showing us who we truly are and what we're capable of becoming. We don't need to destroy it. We need to understand it better." Lisette continued. "The precursors didn't choose us because we developed powerful technology and then abandoned it. They chose us because we transformed its purpose from destruction to understanding." As dawn broke over Harmonium, painting the crystalline spires of the Academy in golden light, representatives of 17 species gathered in the Great Hall to witness the signing of the Harmonium Accord, a pledge to share the precursor inheritance equally among all sentient beings. At the center of the hall stood the Phoenix Memorial, now modified to include a small fragment from one of the precursor probes, a permanent reminder of how close they had come to extinction and how unexpected their salvation had been. The Varaxians had looked at humanity's warship and thought they knew the ending to the story. They had been right, in a way. Humanity, as it had been, was finished. Something greater had taken its place. And the stars waited.